Today we're going to cover Charles Barkley had an interesting thing to say about the NAL, which kind of went into our conversation yesterday. We'll talk about the Akron situation. Their new athletic director kind of hit it head on. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the transfer portal. Top 100 transfers from the spring portal came out, and it's a little bleak for the MAC. But let's get into it, starting with what Charles Barkley said. We were talking about how can the MAC work? How can the MAC be successful? Which led us kind of into a NIL conversation. What can that look like everywhere? What can it look like, especially for these small schools in the MAC? I got a Charles Barkley quote yesterday coming courtesy of On3. He said, "I've given money to Auburn, legal or illegal, more than any athlete in the history of the school, and the notion that I'm going to come up with a couple $1,000,000 every single year so that we can be good at basketball and football, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Now, what do we think about this? From the get-go, he's right. He's right. One of the things I was talking about yesterday, getting the alumni involved, that's great and that's what you want, but you can't do that year in, year out. You can't have, looking at Eastern with Max Crosby, you can't have him just shelling out money all the time. That just, eventually that well runs dry, and they have other expenses and things that they need to probably use that money for and better causes than just giving it to your school. I think there's a way you can do an alumni incentive thing where it's like, okay, here's some donation on the baseline. I know a lot of these guys give money to the school every year regardless. But it's interesting. If Charles Barkley's saying that he's got buku bucks, that should be a concern. That should tell you, okay, there is an issue when you got big names like Charles Barkley that don't want to do that. Well, why should I have to give millions of dollars every single year just to be good? And I think that's going to be kind of interesting to see more guys go on that route, more athletes and big names. At some point, it's going to become not what you want with the NIL, and you don't want to keep shelling out money, especially if your team's not winning championships. If you're writing a $3 to $5 million check, if you've got that money to do that, and your team's going 8-4, or your team's not getting far in the tournament for basketball, what are you doing? Why would you keep doing that? You wouldn't keep investing in a company that's tanking and closing stores. You wouldn't do that. So that's kind of where that goes into. I was actually having a conversation with my brother yesterday on the pickleball court, talking about at what point did we lose what NIL was? There were people out there against it. I think for the majority, though, college football fans everywhere, were like, yeah, the kids should be allowed to make money off their own name. They should sign autographs. They should be able to, do sponsorship deals. They should be allowed to do that. They're making so much money for these schools. They should be allowed to make money off their own name. At some point, it never was at some point that was gone. That was what we were told was what it was about. It was never that. It was pay to play. It became the NFL. It became any professional league that pays guys. But now what you have is no salary cap. There's no regulations. So this is what we're going to have. We're going to have the power schools with all the money dominating year in, year out. We've seen, you look at the transfer portal, I was looking through the top 100 recruits, and it's all Ohio State, it's all Texas, Miami, Florida, Michigan, the schools with the big money. These schools can't compete. Now, back to the MAC. Came out, I think it was last week, might have been 2 weeks ago now, but the Akron situation has kind of been developing. They have a bowl ban. Their academic progress rate dropped below 914. They're now ineligible for bowl games due to academic reasons. I don't know exactly what the APR is, to be completely honest. I've tried to look into more metrics and all that good stuff, and it didn't. This is the best I can find. It measures how universities keep their athletes academically eligible and on track to graduate over 4 years. They got a penalty after APR dropped to 925 last season, and then now it's 914. So they got a ban. The first school to get this ban since Idaho in 2017. And what do we know about Idaho? They're no longer Division I FBS. So is this a possible track for Akron? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. The other schools this has affected, Mississippi Valley State, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, not the Razorbacks. And this is coming after a tough year for the Zips, 4-8, 3-5 in the conference. It was the best season for the coach, back-to-back 2-10 seasons. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, it kind of scares me a little bit because you don't want that to, become a situation where it's like, is Akron now in trouble of facing, possible leaving the MAC, possible leaving the NCAA, possibly leaving Division I? I don't want to see it for Akron, but you don't know. Well, 2 days ago, they formally introduced Andrew Goodrich, its new director of athletics, and he answered some questions. Before Akron, he came from Gardner-Webb University. He was the vice president, director of athletics since 2022, which Gardner-Webb, they're in the Big South. They've done some good things. I think this is a good move. I think he can do some good things. He talking about the name, image, and likeness. It's the quote he said, how does Akron stay up with the standards of everyone else? Conversation we've been having lately. Name, image, and likeness, no doubt, is incredibly important. It will be more important for some programs than others, but it's important for every team to a certain degree. The way we stay on top of that is by working with our coaches, working with key donors, and working with community leaders to help them understand the value of investing in the name, image, and likeness. Part of what I want to be able to do here at Akron is not just evaluate what we're doing in the athletics department, but evaluate everything that's going on in and around the city of Akron and Northeast Ohio. I genuinely believe that if we manage the situation well and we're able to identify, recruit, and retain some of the best student athletes, especially those from our region, we're going to have incredible programs. It's going to improve the brand. We'll have a lot of pride, and it comes with a great self-fulfilling cycle where now more people want to get involved and get more invested, and allows us to continue to go out and support student athletes and the brand value. Okay. I take that head on. That's a great quote. And I think that it's true. But I don't know how practical it is. The theory is a great theory. If you get some of the key donors and the key players in the city of Akron to buy in and, help these guys out with deals and sponsorships and all this stuff, and the money gets right, and let's say you have a couple of great winning seasons, you win a couple MAC championships, is that really going to get more people involved? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. We haven't seen this long enough to have an answer to that yet. I don't know if it does, is the issue. Because in Ohio, there's a lot of competition for other schools, and it's going to be tough. He was asked the football program's multi-year academic progress rate scores come under scrutiny, the team being ineligible for a bowl game next season. How does that turn around? Here's his response. Here's the good news, right? We already had a plan in place at Akron. I met with folks here and talked about it. We've actually seen improvement in the APR scores here on this campus, I believe, the last 2 years. The way the APR is designed, it looks backward for a period of 4 years, so that process is already happening. Picture a flower growing. It's planted, it's under the ground, you can't see it at the beginning, but it's growing, and underneath, and soon that's going to sprout, and you're going to see the positive effects of the last 2 years of the institution's been working on. Coach Moorhead has done an incredible job previously at other schools. I believe, just looking at his numbers, I believe it is 2 different times in his career that he's had football teams that are at a perfect 1,000 APR. He's 100% committed to getting this fixed off the field, and I'm confident that we're going to get there. He also talked about the women's sports having issues at Akron, so forth and so forth. I like this out of him. I want to see Andrew Goodrich have some good success at Akron. A new athletic director is exciting, and that's true about the APR. It does look back over the 4 years, so some of this stuff, I think the ban is actually from the 2023 season. I think that's where that's coming into play, and that's unfortunate, but it's going to happen. So, realistically, we mentioned at the beginning of this, am I worried about Akron falling into that Idaho's fallen in, and you see the other schools that are not Division I that struggle with this? Not yet. Not yet. I will say this. If Akron has less than 3 wins this season and the following, it's going to be an issue. I think Akron's best thing they can do this year is be dominant, try to do their best to win a MAC championship. They can't get to a bowl game, and that's fine, but try their best to win a MAC championship, which is obviously the goal every year, but when you're under scrutiny, a bad season blows it up even more. Now looking at the transfer portal, some sad news, which shouldn't be surprising, but we're talking about, the MAC successing. Well, the MAC is losing some players. Reggie Virgil, wide receiver from Miami of Ohio, he's transferring to Texas Tech, 6'4", 190 junior. He's the 47th ranked of the top 100. He was ranked 47 of the spring recruits. He had 2 quiet seasons with the Redhawks, only 2 catches. So he's a big body. he just hasn't, done a ton. And then this past season is when he kind of came to life in his junior year, because he'll be a senior. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. He had 41 catches, 816 yards, 9 touchdowns, 300-yard performances. They finished on the 7-game win streak and then lost in the MAC championship. But he did some good stuff. He did take a visit to Michigan State, which, I mean, that would have been good for them if they could have got him. They weren't able to. The other guy leaving Miami of Ohio, Rayon Strader, I might be saying some of these names wrong, corner, 6'1", 182, sophomore, so he's got 2 years left. He's heading to Auburn, which, man, that's another big step up. Texas Tech also was another one of those schools that just buku oil money, and they're spending it all. He currently led the FBS in pass breakups with 18 on the year. He had 13 as a freshman. He picked off 3 passes, and opposing quarterbacks had a 52% completion rating against him in 2024. He was one of the most recruited corners in this cycle. 18 offers from Power 4 programs, and yeah, I mean they got another young corner coming too. They got actually a couple young corners coming in, so I think he's going to be a rotational guy. I think Reggie Virgil at Texas Tech could be a stud. Texas Tech, though, did spend a lot of money, so they got some dudes. It'll be interesting. I think Strader is going to fit in at Auburn, unfortunately. You hate to see him leave. And then we got 2 guys that aren't leaving from the top 100. They're not necessarily leaving MAC schools this year, but were at the MAC. Murad Watson, defensive tackle. He was at Syracuse. He's heading to Texas, 6'3", 313. He initially was a Kent State commit, but then obviously decommitted and went to Syracuse, which he had a pretty good season there. He's a beast. He is an absolute beast, 6'3", 313, 3 years of eligibility. Texas landed a stud. And then the other one is tight end Tanner Koziel. Also could be just butchering that. He's got 1 season left, going from Wisconsin to Houston. He initially was at Ball State, where he had 94 catches, 839 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. He was 4th in the FBS in catches, 2nd team All-MAC, freshman All-American as well. And for a tight end, this man is 6'7", 237. So a little light for a guy that's 6'7", but man, that's a good target. Why he's leaving from Wisconsin to Houston, honestly, I'm not sure. That, to me, feels a little bit of a step down, but what do I know? What do I know? Those are the only in the top 100. There's obviously a lot of other transfers going in and out, and we'll cover that more as the summer goes on because there's a lot of that going on. But just taking a look at this, the Miami of Ohio losing 2 guys, 2 key guys that, one had 2 years left, one guy was going into his senior year, and that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to replace those kind of guys. And, you'd love to keep them, but how do you keep them? And it's an interesting thing to see. I want both of these guys to succeed. Obviously, I want all these guys to succeed. But it's tough to see it in the springtime when you feel like a guy's coming back. I think spring transfer portal, honestly, hurts more than the winter portal because it's like after the season, emotions might be fresh. They might have a great opportunity, but spring portal's like, man, you just don't want to be here. You had a chance to leave and you didn't. You thought about it and you really do want to leave. Hopefully those guys have great success. I think Miami of Ohio is still going to be good. Next time we're going to cover the quarterback rankings, who I projected starters are, where I think they rank in the MAC, and who I think could have a shining year. That does do it for us here on a Wednesday, a little bit shorter this morning. We got a lot of stuff to cover and a lot of stuff to get to, but there was some breaking news I wanted to cover quick this morning. So you have yourself a great Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.